All right, so don't get too excited, but so I was looking for polymer documentation and found this cool site. Said, hey, I'm going to learn how to build a custom overlay. It's pretty neat. These cards look useful as well. Maybe I want to start to learn about this topic. And then as I was clicking through, realized this entire site you're viewing actually is a polymer element. And that got me thinking. So I forked this element, and we can see in the documentation, it's basically just a wrapper of, there's a code lab as a HTML element, and then there's a code lab step to get each of the steps, right? And then it says step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. You can inject whatever you want there. So then what I did is I just took a few pages from a course lesson and threw them into these tags. So this is static, right? This is not actually driven directly from Elms yet, but I should be able to jump in and do step equals 1.1. And this step equals 1.2, and then I can look in here and see in the documentation for step that step, arbitrary step in the code. Okay, so let's see what this relates to. It appears to have ignored my 1.1, but as you can see, here's my course content. I haven't applied any of the styles, obviously, but because we already use this methodology of framing in more sophisticated functionality, it pretty much just works even without our styles. At the end of this clearly won't go anywhere. I told it not to, but this could provide a pretty interesting option for kind of breaking up a complex navigational structure, right? So if I'm at this point drilled down into material, and then I see, these steps to learning about this. The other interesting thing you'll note is over here in this top corner, they have a time remaining, and that's a estimate of the material. Well, we already have things doing material estimation. So if we made a meta element on top of this, right, I could see us having like a LRN player or like lesson player, or actually it would be a design. So LRN design, lesson player or something like that, right? And that meta element could then be provided like an array of steps equals this, and that we could have durations, or even just unpack from steps. But basically we could have a single JSON blob unpack and present itself in the way you just saw, but be delivered by a CMS, maybe one in question that I would be doing that from. And then we could do that almost as like drilling down into a deeper structure. So in our courses currently, going to the one I went to for this, I stole a few pages from this structure. So we kind of already have this largely clean UI, but you can drop down into lots of other things. You could say, hey, here's the whole stinking course. But what would be really cool or interesting to play with is if you step down into this, and maybe this page kind of still sets up like, here's what I'm going to do. And instead of this infinite nesting that can start to happen, that we had this as a polymer element that was available, so that if I dropped into the Sumerians, that all of this would basically load this mini application inside of it. So, in the cheapest way possible here, if we had this kind of almost more as the below the fold even, and that this was just driving within the interior of that lesson, it drastically improves the user experience when I go, kind of take a deep dive into material, because I might be off on one of these for quite a while. And if the point is that I'm engaging with this material, you'll see in this case it's, watching, going to multiple links or watching a lecture. I wonder how we could better chunk that material if it's presented in that slick, book pagination type of a methodology. So it's just part of the world that gets opened up via Polymer web components. So yeah, you should do it too.